وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وما آتيتم من زكاة تريدون وجه الله فأولئك هم المضعفون صدق الله العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. In this short time that we have, perhaps we have about 15-20 minutes, we're going to touch upon the basics of zakat. One of the 5 pillars of Islam is zakat, or the obligatory charity. In charity we have voluntary charity and we have obligatory charity. Obligatory charity is further divided into zakat and zakatul fitr. Zakatul fitr is also mandatory, but there is a different criteria for zakatul fitr, and the regular zakat is also mandatory and there is a different criteria for that. Literally, zakat means to purify. And when you give zakat, you are purifying your wealth and you are purifying your body as well. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah At-Tawbah, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. Take charity from their wealth, thereby purify them and cleanse them. So the cleansing of the body and the purification of the wealth is achieved by the discharge of this duty by giving zakat in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as with other pillars of Islam, zakat also has some qualification requirements. It's not required from every person. Certain people are under this obligation and others are not. So we're going to briefly talk about that tonight, inshallah. In order for zakah to become obligatory upon a person, number one, they have to be Muslim, male or female. So zakah is equally obligatory upon males and females. Number two, they have to be an adult. So according to the majority opinion of scholars, zakah is not obligatory upon the wealth that is owned by a non-adult, a child. A child is anybody who hasn't reached the age of puberty, which varies from boys to girls. Boys reach the age of puberty later and girls reach the age of puberty sooner. But that is the criteria of bulugh or adulthood in Islam. So any person who is under that age, so it's not necessarily the 18 years, which is the standard age we have in America to distinguish between minors and adults. Anybody who's under 18 is considered a minor. Anybody who's 18 and above is considered an adult. That is not the age definition or maturity definition in Islam. A child is someone who has not hit the age of puberty. So any wealth that is owned by a child, there is no zakah obligatory upon that wealth. So a simple question is, how does a child own wealth? There are different ways that a child can be owner of some considerable amount of wealth. Number one, the parents give money or jewelry to the child. So they give it to that child. Basically, they put it in his account, they put it under his name, and they don't touch it anymore, because now they have transferred the ownership of that wealth to that child. Or in other cases, children may receive wealth from others as well. They may receive wealth from their grandparents, they may receive wealth from their uncles, from their aunts, from relatives or non-relatives. If it is given specifically to a child, then it is that child's property. It is that child's wealth. Other cases include inheritance. So the child could have inherited from the grandfather or from the uncle or from someone else, from the mom's family or from dad's family. So inheritance could be a large sum of money. It could be $100,000. It could be $1 million in some cases. So a child can be owner of that, and it will be considered the ownership. However, there will be no zakah on that until that child reaches the age of puberty. Once again, we have to keep in mind that the age of adulthood in Islam is different from the general concept of adulthood, which is 18 and above are adults, and 18 and under 18 are considered minors. Number 3, you have to be sane. The person who is the owner of wealth, so he's Muslim, he is an adult, and the third condition is that they have to be sane, meaning they are not mentally disabled. If some person is mentally disabled, then that person qualifies as majnoon, which means they are excused from these obligations. They are excused from the obligation of zakah as well. Even if they have a big chunk of money in their ownership, but since they are mentally disabled, that takes them out of the liability of zakah. And the last condition is the nisab. Nisab, in simple terms, is the minimum threshold of amount of wealth that one owns. So nisab is determined by two values, either by gold or by silver. These are the standard values. In terms of silver, the amount of silver that one can have, or its equivalent cash value, is 612 grams of silver, which turns out to be not much. Guess how much is 612 grams of silver? Roughly, it is about $450. It's not much. It's not a lot of money. And the other standard is the gold standard. The gold standard is about 87 grams of gold, which turns out to be about $6,000 equivalent of cash. So that's a very high bar, and silver is a very low bar. Either way, if someone possesses silver or its equivalent in cash in this amount, then zakah is obligatory upon them. Likewise, if someone only has gold and their gold reaches that amount or higher, then zakah is obligatory upon them as well. If someone has some of this, some of that, some of silver, some of gold, some cash, some other commodities in their possession, and combining them would qualify them and reach this threshold or go above and exceed the threshold, then zakah will become obligatory upon that person as well. So let's say, for example, they have about 80 grams of gold or 75 grams of gold. And at the same time, they also have about 500 or 400 grams of silver. So in that case, if you combine the two together, then they will meet the threshold or exceed the threshold, then zakah will become obligatory upon them. The secondary condition to this primary liability of zakah is complete year has to pass by, which is referred to in Arabic language as hawlanul hawl. A whole year has to pass by on that wealth in order for zakah to become obligatory. But there are a few things to keep in mind in this regard. First of all, this secondary condition of completing a whole year, a cycle of entire year, applies only initially. So let's say you got a job for the first time this year, and now you're making money. You're getting $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month or $15,000 a month. And now every month you are spending money as well. You're paying your bills, you're paying your expenses, you're paying your rent, your mortgage, whatever. and you're saving some money as well. Every month you're saving about $1,000 or $500 or $2,000. So from the day you start getting that money, let's say in January of 2022, you got $1,000. So you start counting yourself sahibun nisab, as the one who possesses the minimum threshold of zakat. So now from there count 12 months, Islamically by the way, lunar months. Lunar months are a little bit shorter than the solar months, about 10 days shorter than the solar months. So allow a whole year to pass by. Once a whole year has gone by and you maintain that amount of wealth or you increased, then you will have to give zakah when the year has completed. What happens if someone lost money in the middle? After 2 months, after 3 months, they lost money. They don't even have $500 in their bank account anymore, or they went negative, or they only have like $200 in their bank account. But they quickly recovered after a week or after 2-3 weeks or a month or 2 months. If they recovered within a short period of time, then the year will not break. You will continue counting your year. But if they lost the job or something happened and they went so low in their bank account, in their possession of money, that they only had $200 for like 4 months, 5 months of the year, then they will start the cycle again. So that happens with people. If someone did have money, but in the middle of the year they lost money for whatever reason, and they went so low that they didn't even have the minimum threshold, and they maintained that kind of poverty for some time, then they will have to start the cycle again. So once you have completed the cycle, the whole year cycle, now you will make calculation of zakat. When you are doing calculation of zakat, take into account whatever cash you have at hand, whatever cash you have in your bank account, whatever cash you have in your savings, in your checking, in your investments, CDs, or whatever other accounts you have, whatever cash you have at home, whatever cash you have in your pillows, whatever cash you have. So take into account all the cash that you have and write it down. There are some calculators I will share with you inshallah on WhatsApp group that you can use to make calculation of zakat. So number one, count all the cash that you have on the day that you are going to give your zakat. Let's say for example, you're going to give zakat on the 15th of Ramadan. Okay? So on the 15th of Ramadan, check all your balances. How much you have in your checking account, how much you have in your savings account, how much you have in CDs, how much you have cash at home or cash in your car, in your purse, whatever. So count all of that and write it down. Alright? Then see if you have invested money in stocks, in shares. We'll come to 401k. So if you have invested money in stocks, in Tesla stock or in AT&T stock or whatever stock you have, if you have invested money in stock, take into account the value of the day of those stocks. If those stocks happen to be up, really up, you take the value of that stock, write it down, and whatever your value is, you will give zakah as a percentage of that. If on that day the stocks, let's say went down, it crashed, the market crashed, and all the stocks went down, and you lost money, whatever you lost, you don't have to give zakah on that. Whatever value you have in stocks on that day, that's what you will write on the paper, that this is how much money I have in stocks. If the value of that on that day is $10,000, that's what you will write down. If the value of that is $20,000, that's what you will write down. Then see if you have loaned money to someone. If you have given loan to people, you may have given $5,000 to someone, you may have given $10,000 to someone, you may have given $50,000 to someone. So the money that is owed to you, and you are expecting to recover that money. You are expecting that that sooner or later, maybe in a month, maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years, this person will return my money. You write down those amounts as well. Whether it is $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, you write that money that you are owed by the people. And then once you have all of these, so take into account into a total calculation of all of this, the cash that you have, the stocks that you have, the shares that you have, the money that is owed to you. So do all of this and do a total of all of this. Once you have a total, then you know that the zakah will be 2.5%. Now, there are some deductions as well. Deductions are possible for the bills that you have to pay. The bills that are currently due. Your mortgage bill, for example, your rent bill, for example, your electricity bill, for example, your telephone bill, for example, or any other amount that is due on you, you can deduct that from the total of that value. If the total value was $30,000, you can deduct this outstanding bills amount from that, and you can write the total after that.
Deduct for that month, correct?
Yes, deduct outstanding bills. Outstanding bills. Outstanding bill is the bill that is due, not something that is due next year or something that is due.
Like the mortgage is due every month.
Yeah. Rent is due every month.
So just 1 month.
Yes. Not so. Once again, outstanding balance is what is due now, not what will be due next month or 2 months from today or 3 months from today or 5 months from today. What is due now? So you can deduct those amounts and then write the total. Okay? If you owe money to people, you owe someone $5,000, you owe someone $10,000, and it is due almost immediately or due upon demand, you can deduct that amount as well from your total value of zakah. Okay, so if you have $30,000 cash and investments, all of that, but you owe $10,000 to some people that is due immediately or due upon demand, then you can deduct that as well. Something that is due in installments or something that is due in a long term, like credit card debt or mortgage or things like that, you cannot deduct that.
Only one month.
That's a bill that you're paying. Yeah, that's not a debt. That's a bill that you're paying. So when it comes to debts, short-term debts, which are either due now or due upon demand, those debts can be deducted from your zakatable assets. And those debts that are long-term, due in your cars, for example, your auto loan that is due in 5 years or 4 years, or your mortgage or other long-term loans, those are not deductible. So that's just a simple yes.
What if a person doesn't have any of those things you spoke about, like CDs, savings, checks? Guys who live with check,
Then he's free. Then he doesn't have any obligation. Yeah, then he's free. This is for those who meet the conditions, who qualify. All right. So when it comes to 401k, we left it out because 401k is a little bit different from this situation. 401k is also an investment, but since it is not an investment that you can access right away, there are penalties, there are conditions, there are requirements. So it falls into a different category, and we'll talk about that later, inshallah. Today we don't have time. There were 2 questions that were sent to us. One question was about taxes and considering them as zakah. So the answer is that zakah is totally different from your taxes. The taxes that you pay, whether your income tax or sales tax or excise tax, those are totally different. They have nothing to do with your zakah, and they will never be considered your zakah. Zakah is separate from your taxes. If taxes are due on you, you have to pay taxes. Of course, your taxes will not be part of your wealth. They will not be part of your zakatable assets. So you can deduct them. If you owe $4,000 or $5,000 to IRS, you can deduct that because that is not your income anymore. You owe it to somebody. You owe it to IRS, for example. But whatever money you give in taxes is not considered zakah. The second question was, how do we calculate zakah on stocks that we are holding long term, and how to calculate zakah on dividends? So zakah on stocks, as I mentioned briefly, is calculated based on the day value. The day you are calculating your zakah, think about all the values that you have of the stocks that you have purchased, that you own, and then give zakah on that. So if you do that every year, it doesn't matter whether they're long-term shares or short-term shares. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah. Yes. What is it? Yes. Yes. No, whatever you have the day of zakah. If it is $50,000, you will give zakah on $50,000, which is 2.5%. If it is $25,000, you'll give zakah on $25,000.
So suppose you have calculated the amount. Say the zakat comes out like $7,000.
Yes.
So you have to pay $7,000.
Yes.
Do you have to pay it right away, or can you pay it over the years slowly, different places?
You can break it down, and you can pay it in installments, or in sets of amount. But remember, if $7,000 is due on you and you have that, you will not be discharged of that. You will not be absolved of that obligation until it is paid. So if you take 3 months to pay that amount, you are still not absolved of that obligation for 3 months. If you do it on the day, then you're done. Yes. Lamb? Land. Yeah. There is no zakah on land. Yeah. Unless you buy something to sell.
What if you start with let's say it's like 5,000 and the year it's about 50,000? Is it going to be 5,000 or 2,000?
No. You will take into consideration the value or the amount on the day of zakah. It doesn't matter what it was at the beginning. What matters is what it was at the end. Let's say, for example, someone had 100,000 at the beginning, but they have 10,000 at the end, so they will give zakah on 10,000. All right, inshallah.